And we're back. Welcome, everybody. This is the Law and Crime Network. Today, caregiving gone wild. And we're talking about the Ohio versus Lindsay Partin case. This was the babysitter who was accused of killing Hannah Wesche, the 3-year-old in her care, dropped off the morning of March 8th. And almost immediately, a 911 call. She goes to the hospital, dies from a brain injury about 10 days later. So critical to any story like this being told by the defendant is, what's the first thing they tell the cops? Because I'm sure my guests will tell you the truth never changes. But what if your story changes? Let's listen to what Lindsay Partin first told the authorities in this case. So here's Lindsay Partin talking to the cops the first time, and you can tell it's sort of a lighthearted discussion. Initially, she admits to, corporal punishment toward Hannah, and I think it's important to point out that according to the evidence, her father, Jason Wesche, said, yes, you can use corporal punishment to take care of Hannah if she needs some sort of correction. Okay, joining me here, just happened to stop by, Michael Koribanics. How you doing, sir? Good. So we have the Michaels versus the Josephs. We got two pair. Let me ask you, in a case like this kind of first investigation interview, critical stuff, and kind of forms a baseline, right?
In all my years of experience, I've never seen anybody walk into a police station without an attorney, give a statement, and have it work out well for him. It just never works out that way.
Yeah, so let me ask you, Joseph Tully, is it a situation in which the defendant says, I got this handled, I know how to handle this, I can talk to the cops and not hurt myself?
I think a lot of times people want to defend themselves. It's a natural human reaction, and cops are trained to prey upon that. The advisement that we're all familiar with is, what you say can and will be used against you in a court of law if it's harmful, but what's good for you will be kept out of court. So it's really, as the other Michael said, not in any defendant's or possible suspect's interest to give a statement to any law enforcement without an attorney present.
But Joseph Scott Morgan, what about the jury's interpretation of that? Hey, she's just sitting there at this table talking to the cops. She has nothing to hide.
Yeah, she's a regular chatterbox. You don't see that happen many times in an interview. Most of the time, the people will be very reserved, scared. But there's other ways to interpret, comments that she makes. She's trying to convince them that she's shocked, as if she's not portraying it well enough. She actually makes that statement twice over the course of this. And so, yeah, that's going to have some weight, I think, if other information is further revealed, down the tracks. They'll remember that. The jury certainly will after watching that tape.
Well, then they got another shot to listen to some interview tape between the defendant and the cops, and now she's starting to open up a little more about how she would punish Hannah. Let's listen. So we have the babysitter now, Lindsay Partin, with the cops, demonstrating how she shook little Hannah. And Joseph Scott Morgan, that demonstration was probably minimalized a little bit. How damaging is that kind of information and display?
Well, yeah. Sometimes it's just better not to say anything at all, as our colleagues were saying just a moment ago that are in the defense business. And, people walk in, they cross swords with the police officers. They do this every single day, and they're just sitting there and just letting her regurgitate all this. She even said, hey, I'm not lying about that, which is a cue for us, in the interview room. And yeah, you're right. She probably throttled it back a bit when she's demonstrating the shaking. You can only imagine. And I think my big question is, how many times had she shaken her over a period of time? Is she a person that just gets frustrated with little children?
Yeah, and that was a causal question as to, was it an acute issue that morning, or was it built up over time? Joseph Tully, it seemed to me we had good cop and better cop in that interview scenario. They're just having a great old time. What did you think about how they handled that?
Well, again, what people need to remember is that most of the time in interview rooms, officers aren't looking for the truth of the situation. A lot of times their course of action is predetermined, and they're doing everything that they can to convict. Sometimes they do it in a mean way, sometimes they do it in a nice way. And here, they're clearly egging her on to facilitate her to talk about any instance of physical contact or corporal punishment between her and the child. And it's not turning out well for her.
No, it's not. Michael, would you refuse a case if you had a defendant that had piled on that kind of information with the investigators?
Well, it depends. It depends if they did that without my advice. If I advise a client not to go give a statement to the police and they decide to do it, I think that's not going to be a
You're gonna
good
cut 'em loose then?
relationship. Then I think that really hurts the attorney-client relationship. In this instance, I mean, listen, the police act fast. They like to have a client that doesn't lawyer up so they can do exactly what they did here. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's their job.
Of course. And in this case, it certainly paid off. And we're going to find out how, because we're going to see Lindsay Partin on the stand. And the jury can then say, well, here's what she said in those interviews. Now she's right in front of us. Changes, difference in demeanor. Let's find out. We'll go right to that when we come after this break. Okay, so there we are. Just some of the testimony from Lindsay Partin, the defendant in the case. She had her own kids, and so she mentioned Olivia. That was the youngster in the house with Hannah, who was suffering at that time. Let me ask Michael Koribanics, who's here. Obviously, most of the time you're not putting your defendant on the stand, are you?
Usually it's a Hail Mary pass when it can't get any worse, I think, especially in this instance. I mean, it's just, defendants never testified before. Police testify all the time. All the state's witnesses have experience. And when somebody's life's on the line, it could cause her a bad mistake.
How did you feel in the first interview?
Joseph Scott Morgan, it seems to me that this case was begging for more forensics. What do you think?
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, for me, there's one standout expert in the country that deals specifically with forensic neuropathology relative to forensic pathology in children. I would have liked to have seen that individual on the stand. I wish they'd reached out to them. I have to say, relative to this young lady testifying, I felt as though that it would have made more of a difference with the jury, because this is one of those cases where I think that it was important for her to speak this to the jury, to say that, that look, I'm a caring person, I'm not out to kill a child. But of course, we know what happened at the end of the day. I don't think that really mitigated anything at all.
Yeah. Joseph Tully, I think that the dad still had more to offer. So quickly here, what are your thoughts on maybe expanding that part of the case if they had a chance to do it over again?
Well, shaken baby cases or shaken child cases are very technical. And I think the defense should always consult the top level experts, as the other Joseph said. It makes me very concerned about hearing the lethargy of the child before she even got to the sitter's house that morning. And that makes it seem, or that would be consistent with the fact that this injury had already occurred.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a key point. And we're going to have to leave it there. But I thank you, all of my Josephs. Joseph Tully, criminal defense attorney out of California. Of course, Joseph Scott Morgan, the forensic death expert. And on the set here, Michael Koribanics. Thank you, buddy, criminal defense attorney. That's going to do it for me, Michael Bryant. Stand by for the Daily Debrief coming up next. And tomorrow, 2 live trials going to get started right here on the Law and Crime Network. Have a good night.